Hey, Jason, thanks for talking me through on Slack. We finally got into this one right when you told me to come to the engine yard.
Oh. Well, we're all here now, so that's all that matters, right?
Sure, sure.
I was doing a wonderful soliloquy in an empty channel.
Oh.
Yeah. Too bad it's gone forever.
It's recorded. It's recorded. You could like clone it. Yeah. Merge the recordings. And this one's recording now too. Community best practice. Welcome to Cluster Ops.
Okay. Well, thanks.
So we off to a slow start today. We just spent some time talking through Jason coming in as co-chair, and then priorities and sort of making sure that we're on the right track for the SIG. So it's a really good time for us to make sure the SIG's goals are aligned and what's going on. And Jason had taken some thoughts, and they're in the meeting notes. And so we're happy to discuss how, get feedback on how do we make the SIG relevant, popular, and do a mission check. So we're just opening up the floor to that.
Yep.
Okay.
So we're hoping that maybe you take a look through the specific items and see, one, are we missing anything? Two, does this represent anything that feels like a diversion from our core mission? And three, do any of these need to be the highest priority?
Okay. Just looking them over now. I like being invaluable to community ecosystem.
So one of the things that I think we need to keep making sure we do right is get a balance between vendor participation, so we can be a vendor neutral place, and operators, and not have operators feel like if they show up here, they're going to basically be preyed on as a vendor push.
Okay, that sounds good to me.
So yeah.
Yeah, I agree. So how would we do that, though?
That's kind of the question of the hour, because there are disparate lists of companies that are starting to adopt Kubernetes out there, but I don't know that there's any really good central place to necessarily do that. I think what we might have to do is do a little bit of legwork to get some big installations, some medium, some small, and just start recruiting people to attend these meetings who are actually living with Kubernetes day to day.
So what's going to make this meeting relevant to those users, those operators?
So big things are going to be all the forward-looking breaking changes, like the Kubernetes changes in 1.6 that basically etcd 3 is going to be default for 1.6. Also, trolling all of the Kubernetes issues specifically that are relevant to operators of existing clusters, so that they know. Like, there's this tremendously destructive Docker bug out there right now where if you spin up a number of containers, it basically renders your node inert, and just stuff like that. I mean, people need to know these issues are out there so that they're not banging their heads against the wall trying to figure out what's wrong when it's a bug or whatnot. Because most operators don't have time to troll through a bunch of issues to understand what's relevant to them or not.
So can we take care of some of that by having a standard agenda session where where we say, look, every agenda because we have a weekly meeting. So in the weekly cadence, you say, all right, are there breaking bugs, and push everything else off the agenda. Let's talk about breaking issues. Let's talk about deploy issues. Let's talk about release. And if that becomes part of our agenda and note taking, then that's going to create critical mass. That'll help bring it. Are those things that show up in other SIGs?
I don't think anybody's actually covering these things from that perspective.
I really like having those types of standing agenda items, because that really makes a difference.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we just have to have people that know those things and post and know to post them.
Yep.
Okay. So as part of the standard agenda, we'd have critical, maybe, do we have a classification of cluster operation? What is a P0 to a cluster operator versus what might be a P0 to the greater community?
I would be okay to let that emerge.
So maybe, because we'd have to figure out what actually is important for cluster operators to know. And if it's something that only affects bare metal versus something that affects AWS, or like we'd have to come up with some meaningful taxonomy, because
I see what you're saying.
Because otherwise people are going to be, if it's a bug in SSL certs and basically your API server can be easily compromised, that's something that affects everybody versus, something else.
I mean, I would just let them run. I'd just collect them and see what we can do.
Right.
Okay.
I fixed I addressed a couple of bugs this week that wasn't necessarily even in Kubernetes. There was one in Flannel and there was one in CNI. And because I couldn't build the binaries for those necessary parts automatically, so I had to fix those bugs in those other projects. So I mean, operators are going to have a wide variety of things, and if you're operating a TLS encrypted API server and that's a problem, that is going to be something that operators would be interested in. I think operations is, I mean, I think it would be different than, hey, how do I create a cluster, or how do I create a service item or a deployment or something like that. That's more a clear line where that's a user. But operators have to, build, they have to, keep it up. They have to, attach storage, things like that. So I think if the bug affects operators in a way, in any way, I think that we could just say that's our line. If it's not a user item, or if it's not a doc item, that's the only two things I could think of that wouldn't be in operations purview. Unless I'm wrong. I mean, feel free, you guys, to talk it over here. But yeah, so just this week alone, I found 2 build errors that I had to fix to get things building better for us, and I consider those operator issues that weren't even in the Kubernetes product. I mean, they were the Flannel and CNI stuff. So
no, Matt, I think that's
go ahead.
That's dead on, Matt. That is exactly dead on, because those are the things that this bug I was just talking about. It's in Docker, but try running in Kubernetes node and not have this bite you at some point. So it's
sure. Okay. Yeah. Well, I mean, if it'll help, I can get a list and we can start, this week. Just start saying, hey, these are some of the issues that I ran into. But I don't want it to be all about us. I'd be interested to see what other people are hitting. But at the same time, I don't want this to become a bitch fest where we just come in and bitch about things that are broken or not working, right? And hope that people will fix them. I think we need to have, it needs to be, I mean, like standard things that we would expect on a bug. We need to have a use case that we can clearly tie to the operator, right? To a Kubernetes operator. And then we just need to, if this is something in our that we consider an operations thing that we need to work on, we could, maybe assign it or assign a reviewer or something like that. I think those would be, things that our group could do, right? And I don't want people just to come in and say, hey, my one edge case doesn't work, and then do a drive-by and say, hey, this doesn't work, and if they don't get any traction, they'll just bail. I think that they'll need to provide some information to us to make sure it's an operator use case, and then we could look into it and see if we have the expertise, the knowledge to fix it.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that's really good because what I see, if I could wave my magic wand, is that there's a vast network of operators out there that we're all connected.
Yep.
We're all seeing errors, issues that we can correlate in a way that we can feed back to the greater community and say, here's an anti-pattern in your infrastructure. If you do this version of Docker with this version of the K8s API, here's what's going to happen. And one, head off future problems for people who are going to see it. And two, give some sanity to poor people who don't have time to troll issue boards for figuring out what's wrong. So I think we really become an advisory board, like the weather service,
Yeah. Yeah.
partly cloudy with a chance of Docker, it's like.
Yep. Well, would that be enough to keep people coming back? I mean, what if we're covering stuff that people aren't necessarily worried about, or maybe because I'm aware of other vendors, and other vendors might have something fixed or might have something, not have that same problem. So how would we be vendor neutral, or how would we? I mean, for me, it just goes back to the use case. We'd have to try it
Mm-hmm.
on our Docker cluster and see if that worked or if it didn't. And we'd have to have a good reproducible use case to do something like that, right? And not every case, in some cases, some people have different versions of Docker installed, and they wouldn't be able to change that version, right? So I think we'd have a challenge just there trying to reproduce it. But how would we stay relevant so that people aren't, if we're reporting on these problems and if people aren't really looking for that, I guess that's my concern is, well, we don't have this problem because we're using cops or whatever, kubeadmin, and we didn't get it set up that way.
I actually think that's very relevant to say, though. It's like, well, I'm doing this. These are the things I'm running into. Somebody can say, well, we didn't see that because we use cops, and it solved this problem for us. Or it did it in this way. And then actually, I actually think the operators, and to an extent, the shared vendor community can say, well, we made a different choice because we felt these were priorities. That's the discussion I want to have.
Yeah, that's good. For a classification then, and I know when we create, it's too bad we don't have our own GitHub account, because when we create a GitHub issue, you can put in a form that you can fill out, right? And that would be one of the things is how do you operate Kubernetes? Is it a custom set of bash scripts that you wrote yourself, or is this cops, or is this Juju, or is this some other vendor that they're doing? And then let's classify that, make it a reproducible scenario. That's always a gotcha for me, because people can get bugs that just isn't working and then leave, and that doesn't help us very much get to the bottom of it, right?
And so one of the things we've been doing when we first kicked off is we're trying to create an ecosystem catalog.
Yep.
And so we can certainly dust off those spreadsheets and go back and start cataloging that. Right. I get nervous when I watch some of the Kubernetes docs. People do a pull request and we get this documented list of, this is how you do the installs, and some marketing. It's just hey, I'm just adding myself to this list.
Well, maybe we don't have to have the complete list there. Maybe we just come up with a classification system or some way to to classify the bugs, right, or the issues. Just say, look, we saw this with this particular vendor or this particular method, and this is the problem, and this is how either we worked around it or we solved it, or we still have this open. I don't know. I mean, I don't think we should have a box of checks that you have to be in one of those things. But we also, because people are going to bring their own. They're going to say, well, I operate it differently than any of these things, right? I wrote my own custom scripts, right? They're going to say, well, I don't fit in that. I didn't use those guides or whatever.
Especially the scale operators, right?
Right.
I think that we do have a way to categorize the issues on GitHub when people file, and it's just at least for I've seen for AWS and GCE and for vSphere categorization of bugs. Basically, you can. I do search using those keywords that are added to the bug.
Okay, but do we have the power to change the template? I would guess not. But
There
I would
was
guess
there was a pull request where they were listing there was this concept of maintainers which has changed to they removed the concept of maintainers and they made owners, and they added a large number of people who have already committed to that folder or to those files, saying that if you have already made a commit over here, you are an owner, and then you can make changes, and you're also reviewers. They have a list of reviewers and owners to do that. So if you see a folder there where you're supposed to be, there will be a file inside there that says owners, and there will be, I think, owners or maintainers, which will have two columns. This is like an INI file format that will say reviewers and maintainers or reviewers and owners, something like that. And you can add your GitHub alias there.
Yeah, I'm aware of that. I just was wondering how we could, how as a group, as cluster ops, we could, get some of those and present some of those at our meetings. I think for me, it sounds like that's the kind of work we should be doing is, here's this bug on this platform with this cloud and this configuration and how to reproduce it or whatever. And, it's a gotcha, watch out. I don't know. I'm familiar with that area of the docs where the owners and the maintainers got changed to owners. But I just don't know. I don't know how we would enforce if somebody opens a bug against, I'm just going to use ours as an example, against the Juju way of doing it. They're going to, they should put Juju in there and put my name in there as the owner, but I don't know that we can enforce that, right? It's my name's in the doc in that section, but I don't know if we can say where to put that.
But I would be stunned if there's something specific in the Juju way that's not a generic issue in Kubernetes.
Me too, but it's possible. I'm not going to rule that out. But
sure.
I'm just trying to think if we took some of those bugs that we were going to talk about at these meetings and we classified them, well, this is a problem in Juju or this is a problem in a different deployment mechanism. We could say that but maybe it's not a problem in COPS, or whatever, because it's operated differently, right? Back to the HTTPS settings for the API server could be operated a slight bit differently than the way we do it. So I don't doubt there's bugs there. So
so I think so if we just cull it down to if we distill it to the thing that operators really need to know is,
right,
in a short period of time, how do I get the information that I need that's going to affect my production cluster and wake me up at 3 a.m? We just need to, as operators and as subject matter experts in this, we're the people who are best geared to be able to parse those issues in a rapid way and say, this looks like trouble. I can see a use case where this is going to cripple a cluster. For example, any issue that is known to cripple nodes or to pull out cluster capacity like that should be a P0 as far as an operator is concerned, right? Because that's something that could rapidly degrade the entire production ecosystem. So those are the things that I'm thinking that if we hear about those or see those, and we should, one, raise awareness, two, make sure that we're getting traction on from getting it fixed, which I think is part of your thing that you're saying, Matt, is that it's not just identifying, but it's also making sure that it's getting fixed. So I think we've got those two things. But number one is just awareness, because at 3 a.m, the last thing you want to be doing is trying to find in the Kubernetes issues, like what is actually relevant to this thing that's crashing my nodes.
Right.
So that's, to me, that's the kind of relevant, useful information I think that would bring people here.
Right.
I agree with you. I've heard P0 bantered around at the other meetings that I've been to. That's the highest priority one. I'm just not clear at the rating system there. That's the highest priority. P5
is take a snooze. P0 is get off your butt now and fix it.
Is this a standard rating system that I wasn't aware of?
Pretty conventional.
Yeah, pretty good.
For Kubernetes, or is it for other things?
I think it might have come from Jira, actually.
Oh.
So.
Okay.
So yeah, I've been using that for years.
Okay. Yeah. It's new to me. So.
Okay.
So yeah, so I think that's it. And Rob did some great things in the agenda. If you look, he's got, so I think one is critical information. Two is a little just general interest, like as an operator, and these are things that might be interesting to me.
So,
And then three, discussion as peers.
Okay.
I think something we could look at is there is a label called SIG/apps. We could have SIG/cluster ops, at least a label that gets added or someone adds it, whoever triages it as one of the policies, so that at least we can use that to list when we come into the meeting. We can start with a blanket list and start triaging them.
It would definitely help us connect to the development streams.
Yep.
Yes, that would be great, and actually it would force people who are classifying bugs to actually consider that.
Mm-hmm.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, SIG/apps exists. I think we should have SIG/cluster ops.
Yeah, SIG. Jason was suggesting SIG/SIG-CO.
Yeah.
The other option would be SIG-ops.
Yeah, maybe SIG-ops, because that'll make more sense to people.
I'm trying to search what other labels exist.
Yeah, and we actually, in the formation of the SIG, debated a couple of different names, including like SIG-ops. And for a lot of reasons, it was felt that SIG-cluster ops was the better, the clearest moniker. Actually, you could do SIG-COps.
I mean, yeah, the name doesn't matter to me. So
Yeah.
as long as we have a single label where we can just say, let's filter on this and triage it every week.
Yeah, but I agree with you, but also think that we have a marketing challenge to get people thinking that this is the place to coalesce. The SIG bare metal stuff is still on my mind from I wish that team had said, oh, let's just show up at Cluster Ops and bring in bare metal issues.
Well, to be fair, they did give it a shot. I mean, there was a lull there where attendance was low, and it just felt like this was not a place to get things done. So
Yeah.
There is. So we have SIG network, we have SIG node, we have SIG federations, SIG scheduling, SIG API machinery. So I think this is a good pattern to follow.
yeah, we're gonna kick this in high gear, and I think if we can pull off the SIG operator summit, that's going to be really, really cool.
Yeah.
Because for one, I'm just excited to meet all you guys for hang out. So
It'll be good, especially since it looks like the next Kubernetes events are in Europe. So there's an option in spring to have something US.
indeed.
Circling all the way back, I think that if there's a standard agenda that says, look, we're going to talk about, bugs and issues and things like that, it keeps it very real. If it's top of the agenda, then, that'll prioritize itself. Some of it we might find ends up being cyclical based on the release schedule.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, Jason, the things I added in the background were having some substantial shared experience sharing. So getting operators to talk about what they're doing, getting and allowing ecosystem vendor demos, and actually giving them time to go through some Q&A and actually show how the stuff works. We had actually a lot of attendance when somebody saying, look, this is how we do it. This is what we thought about. And I think vendor to vendor, actually, people appreciate seeing how other people are solving the problem. And then cataloging. So we had been doing cataloging of installs, and that's just a discipline. We need to go back and say, hey, found a new install approach. Here's how they're doing it. Here's the strategy. One of the reasons why that was important, I was talking to Joe Beta about this, is that we want to identify classes. I already read it in here. So we want to be able to say, just like we did with the docs, we had 3 classes of install approaches: the static manifest, binaries, and self-hosted. And so that actually is a good exercise. The only way we get there is by by cataloging. And then
Yeah.
the third thing was building knowledge. So reference architecture, which I know people want to talk about, and then generalized docs. And in reference architecture, we keep getting in sizing, hardware, options, HA, configs.
I think node definition is going to be a thing of the future. There's going to be people that want specifications on nodes. Yeah.
Totally.
Whether it's sizing or packages installed, there's things that we added to the node that I didn't have before. That was news to me.
Added to the node? What do you mean?
Well, just I'm not going to remember the package name, but I had to install a different package on there for the node to work better.
Okay.
I have to look it up, but
No, but you do have things that are not installed by default that are quite required for correct operations, like SOCAT.
SOCAT, that's the one I added. That's the one I added. So yeah, I mean, things like that, I think that's going to be a problem.
Okay.
SOCAT, yep. Yep, there you go. So I think that's going to be, along those lines, just SOCAT, maybe have an NFS or some packages available that they'll do logging. I don't know. We had to add SOCAT to our minimum node definition. So
Cool. That's exactly the type of stuff we want to be capturing and sharing.
yeah.
The one that I've been having conversations about is like, what size machines do I buy for if I'm going to run
Yep.
Kube? It's not even Kube, it's Docker on Metal, right? And I've got people like, oh, I'm buying terabyte RAM machines and all this stuff. I'm like, whoa, no, that's not going to work. Don't do that. Don't know. And they're like, why would that work? It's great for VMware. I'm like, Anyway, yeah, there's so many fun conversations to have in this group.
I'm really glad to see this this agenda taking form, because this is a meeting that I want to attend, much less chair. So this is great.
Yep.
I want to volunteer Delwell to talk about what they're doing there at VMware.
Okay.
Not to volunteer you, but I want to volunteer you.
Oh, well, so I can't speak for VMware in general. This is my personal interest in getting into the community. But yeah, internally for DevOps, I'm having a Kubernetes cluster. And yeah, I run a 20 node cluster here. Use all the, this cluster looks like any other Kubernetes cluster outside. So it's running on vSphere. And yeah, I'm the vSphere maintainer for whatever's out there. So we use it to deploy the cluster. That's it. If there are any specific questions, you guys can ask me.
I was just thinking for a future session, because one of the things we want to do is have actual operators kind of give details on what their implementations are and all that stuff.
Yeah, I think it makes sense. It's a good point, I think. We should actually create a calendar saying, yeah.
You want to be on the January 5 agenda? I'm starting to build them.
What do you mean? Oh, yeah, of course.
Yeah, maybe do a demo, or maybe talk about tools that you found useful, or what are the specific things when you're setting up a VMware host that would be conducive to having a better performance in your cluster. Any of that stuff I think would be extremely valuable, because I know there's a lot of VMware installations out there, so it'd be nice to have a good roadmap for them.
Well, I don't think I have a big cluster, but I can still talk about my experiences with what works for me.
That's great.
Yeah, we don't really care about the size of the cluster.
Yeah, that's how you use it, right? Bada bing.
But I will make a note about that.
Do you guys? Yeah, can you add me to the attendee?
You should be able to edit. You should be able to add comments. Here we go. I see you. I'll put you on the.
Yeah, so I added myself. You'll have to approve the change. Thanks, Matt.
Yep.
The I is very important.
Yep.
Great. I would also like to know more about Juju and all that stuff too. So
Sure. Yeah. Well, I don't want to make it about vendors though. I don't want people to be thinking this is just about vending out solutions or people showing off their stuff. But I would be happy to talk about those build issues I ran into, some of the other operating things that I've had problems with. I think other people would run into these and we would be, be useful. Like you said, I think we want to build a meeting that we would like to go to, and then we'll hopefully get other people. And if not, we're going to our own meetings that we built that we wanted to hear about.
Yeah.
So I think that's important. And
yeah.
so, I mean, if we build a meeting and people don't come to it, we'll have to change. But I think this is, like you said, Jason, I think this is a meeting that I'd like to go to, right? Talk about these things, talk about how that affects different things, and then, see if anybody has the expertise to fix those or to work on them or make sure they're getting work. Not all operators are going to be Go programmers and stuff, so we're not going to be able to necessarily, implement these changes, but we could raise them up and bring them up to light. So,
agreed. So there's some people that haven't spoken up much yet. Does anybody else want to throw in their 2 cents? Alan or Judd or? Just want to make sure everybody feels like they can have the floor.
Most of my Kubernetes work this is Judd. Most of my Kube work has gone through OpenShift and all the glories and love that Red Hat puts in it. So I'd be interested to see where it's failing for both communities, and even do a little compare and contrast when we have a bug that's affecting clusters. Is it also happening OpenShift? Has Red Hat already addressed it in some way, and how have they done it? So that could percolate back into helping folks.
I would actually love to see an OpenShift review.
Yeah, I mean, actually, let's put that in the future agendas.
I got it.
Oh, you got it. Thanks, buddy. Yeah, because I mean, that's a whole different fork, right? I mean, who knows what is because it forked to 1.3 or 2?
2.
2. Yeah.
I'm sure the Red Hat people would bristle at calling it a fork.
Yeah.
The features that they added in advance of community adoption.
Precisely. And they are renaming their API. They are renaming their API as the community brings the features into into production.
No, Red Hat clearly did some advanced work to add important features in.
Yeah, for sure.
But this is like the word bottleneck. People perceive it negatively, even when it's more of a descriptive term. The reality is every GitHub clone is technically a fork.
Yeah. And without a bottleneck, you get beer all over you.
Exactly.
Yep.
Right.
Isn't it time for a bottleneck soon? Is that?
Very, yes. You got.
All right.
You have a bottleneck.
Okay, so this is feeling good. So one question too. So some of the work that we've done in the SIG thus far has been real-time hacking on documentation. So for example, the cluster topology documentation, the network layer diagrams. I have kind of mixed feelings about the value of doing those collaboratively, and I would love to get opinions or fist of five from people. Is that something that we should devote some period of meetings to, or should we schedule extracurricular doc hack sessions, or what do you guys feel about that?
Well, certainly I think docs are important, but yeah, I mean, working on them together live isn't probably the best use of all of our time. So I don't know. I'm torn because I really want to put cluster operator documents in, but I don't know. I don't think working on them together at the same time is the best use, unless
Working together can make sense, but maybe not as a part of this particular meeting, because this should maybe give highlights of what happened with the documentation recently, not the process for updating it actually.
The feedback I get when we do it when we get a group is invaluable. I could definitely see us having a separate thread where we have a doc, smaller group doing a doc pack, because it is painful to watch sort of the sausage making.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, maybe we so like we do with the community meetings where we have retros periodically, we could just say like the last Thursday of every month is as a doc hack. And we do the first 10 minutes is just the standard P0, P1 bug thing, and then the rest of the meeting is a doc hack or something like that. So there's a regular cadence to doing that work. And then if there's something that we need to do outside of that cadence that's critical, we could just schedule an extracurricular doc hack.
Yeah. I feel like there's a catch-up need to do it, and I was going to suggest sometime next Thursday to doc hack. Is it something that people would contribute to outside of the meeting time?
Well,
right. If I feel like if we're not, it's a bad habit. I use the discipline of being in the meeting and the allocated time to actually make progress on it. But maybe if we had people pair off and then contribute to the docs as a set, and then show up at the meetings as a progress item. I mean, they're segmented enough that individual people can work on the docs independently.
Yeah, I think there's a little bit of a fear of doing too much work off in a silo, because then what happens is you bring it back to the group and the group's like, a bunch of hungry birds picking it apart, and it just feels like maybe anything that gets done gets undone. So I feel like group hacking, while painful, is good, but I think it does deserve its own time or its own time slot.
I'm in favor of that.
Maybe having it on a monthly slot or something like that.
Are there any former OpenStack doc hackers around, and how did things work there? I know Ann Gentle, who was more or less in charge of that, wrote about her experiences doing this kind of work.
Yeah, I participated in a bit of that. They actually had a doc hack 3-day session where they pulled people together to do it, but they ended up with people who were paid to write the docs.
The profile of the SIG group is much wider than writing the documentation, so having it as a part of the main meeting may be a bit tricky.
So the reason why we started doing the docs is because there is a very broad desire in the SIG, or there was, to have a reference architecture. That was sort of how it started. It's like, all right, we want to actually all talk about how to build a cluster and what you need to do a cluster. And then before we could do that, we actually had to write down, this is the components for a cluster. And we actually got pretty far. I don't know. Jason, the hungry bird thing, while, you know, it's sort of, it can be emotionally hard. You know, you wrote docs and you're going to get torn apart. The process was amazingly effective over a couple of months to produce some really good drawings. And so to me, it's sort of a, you know, you need the whole point of you come back on a review cycle, somebody who hasn't seen it for a while is like, that makes sense to me, that doesn't make sense to me, what are you trying to say? Getting the broader reviews useful. But I think we could do that in 15 minutes every other meeting or less.
Yeah, I think maybe we just, if we compartmentalize the work so it's really clear what people are accountable for. So like draw out node networking to the nth degree, including patches that you're going to have to apply to the system to make, you know, whatever that looks like. So here's your assignment, go run with it. I think that'd work. It's just we need to be relatively proscriptive about what is the box that we're trying to actually diagram. As I think that works, but if we're too broad, then it just sort of feels not as useful to me.
I would love to go in and say, can, you know, individually, like we have this Kubernetes manual upgrade process. I'd love to see somebody write out steps for it, like test it, write out steps for it.
Yes.
If we're making specific asks on, hey, we need somebody to write this down, right? That would help. Yeah,
and then we set aside 10 or 15 minutes of the meeting to review. And right. It's not, you know, the sausage making, it's more like sausage tasting.
Right. Looks like Dewal and I sat down at KubeCon, and we spent, what, it was an hour? It was a while. With drawing out those drawings, and then once I transcribed them, y'all were like, wow, okay, got it, makes sense. We made some small adjustments, and it was further along. And now somebody could actually write docs around that.
I'm totally down with that. Let's give that a shot, shall we?
Okay.
So we could essentially during the next meeting maybe come up with a bullet point list of things that people can volunteer to document that are currently really vague.
Yes. And go back to sections where people can actually just go and write it.
Yeah. I'd love to see an operator's part of the greater website too, the Kubernetes website. So
yeah,
they definitely wanted to do it.
Is it published somewhere like for viewing by anyone?
Yep.
There is demand for us to have this work.
Yeah.
Right. There's just, we have to be specific. We need somebody to do this writing. I think maybe we're approaching it too holistically.
Yeah.
So let's between you and I, we can look at it and we can. Why don't we do this? Might be the right thing to close on. Let's start identifying specific documentation asks that are our compartmentalized our tasks, and ask people to sign up for it, and we'll just maintain a backlog of that.
I think that's great.
And then that'll surface discussion topics.
Cool. And thanks, Matt, for transcribing that.
Mm-hmm.
All right, cool. Well, I feel energized. I feel like we're definitely, this is it. We're the rocket ship. I can feel the rumbling of the engines underneath. We're about to launch. Yeah.
I like it.
DSS bottleneck.
Oh God. No. I strip you of marketing rights for the rest of the year.
That's why rockets are shaped that
way. Next Thursday, I'll spend at least an hour working on docs if somebody wants to hack with me. Same time.
Okay. We'll sync up.
Cool.
Give me awesome. Yeah, you can ping me too. I can help you.
Awesome.
I'll be out, but I can make the Jan 5th one.
Okay.
Awesome, everybody.
All right. have a great holiday, whichever way you celebrate it, and we'll see you in a while.
In a bit.
All right.
Thank
See
you.
you guys. Thanks.
Bye.